Thank you for joining us this morning for this press conference with Mayor Heather Graham, Chief Chris Noeller, and Special Agent from the FBI, Mark Michalek. Thank you for joining us this morning and for the opportunity for us to speak in front of you. At this time, before I take any more of your time, I will introduce the Mayor of Pueblo, Mayor Heather Graham.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Thank you all for being here today. I'm grateful to be joined by our Deputy Mayor and Chief of Police, Chris Noeller, alongside Special Agent in charge of the Denver Field Office of the FBI, Mark Michalek. I want to acknowledge that violent crime continues to make a difficult impact on our community, with 11 homicides so far, and we're already more than a quarter of the way through the year. I want to first express my condolences to the family, loved ones, and friends of those who have lost someone they love and care about this year, with the 11 lives that we have lost in Pueblo. As you know, I ran for mayor on my first day of office. I expressed my commitment to public safety as #1 priority to address for the city of Pueblo. As a citizen of Pueblo myself, I am too frustrated by the gun violence, theft, overall crime rates within our city, and I want to be part of the solution to improve the quality of life for all Puebloans. Many times you hear the Pueblo Police Department talk about Part 1 crime. Part 1 crime includes aggravated assault, arson, auto theft, burglary, homicide, robbery, sexual assault, and theft and larceny. At this point, through last week's CompStat report, which Chief Noeller shared with me, our Part 1 crime is down 6%. Although that sounds like we are trending in the right direction, our homicide rate is up 86% overall. We had 6 homicides last year by this time, compared to the 11 we have this year. Just because our Part 1 crime says it's down 6% overall, we simply will not tolerate the many unnecessary deaths in our community that the crime in certain categories remains high. I know the Pueblo Police Department is working diligently to protect and serve our community. As your mayor, I am working alongside the department to recruit and retain more officers to help serve Pueblo. Since taking office, I have signed a mayoral order that allows us to temporarily suspend the civil service requirements to allow us to recruit lateral transfers from other departments and to increase the number of lists we are able to hire from, so we can more quickly hire new officers. This is all being done without lessening any of the post-certification or training requirements for us to have qualified officers on the streets of Pueblo, simply speeding up the process from application date to hiring date with the Pueblo Police Department, while still maintaining all necessary standards for safety, protocol, training, and quality for our employees. Both Special Agent Mark Michalek and Chief Noeller will share now how FBI and Pueblo Police Department are addressing crime and proactivity working together to solve this issue for our community. At this time, I would like to make a call to action for my fellow Puebloans. To the parents, guardians, friends, loved ones, siblings, and friends of young teens in our community who are participating in these gang-related activities are associated with gun violence and these crimes, please help us. Know where your children are at night. Know where your teens' friends are, who they are associating with, and who is driving them, where they are going, or who they are out late at night with. Even if you think it couldn't be my child or my friend, please be aware of how your oversight and care of our teens affect all of us in our community. We want better for our children of Pueblo. We want our teens to graduate high school, to start careers, or further their education with college degrees and trade schools, to start families and be contributing, successful members of our community. You can help us by accomplishing this by ensuring you are the role model needed by your child or teen, and that they remain safe. By keeping your child safe, you are helping us keep Pueblo safe. At this time, I would like to invite Special Agent Mark Michalek to the podium. Mark is a special agent in charge of the FBI Field Office, which covers all of Colorado and Wyoming. He has been in the FBI for 19 years, serving in Houston, Washington, D.C., San Diego. Prior to the FBI, he was an officer in the U.S. Air Force and graduated from the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. Thank you.
Well, good morning. I stand here in solidarity with Mayor Graham and Chief Noeller to recognize our shared commitment to public safety. In Pueblo, there is no stronger partner than the FBI, and our agencies are working together every day to protect the community by focusing our expertise and resources to address systemic crime and prevent violence. The FBI Southern Colorado Safe Streets Task Force acts as a force multiplier to augment the daily work of the Pueblo Police Department, allowing us to leverage our unique strengths to identify the leaders of criminal organizations and target them for federal prosecution. This strategic approach allows us to have a real impact on disrupting the most violent and persistent criminal groups operating in and around Pueblo. In fact, just last month, a Pueblo man named Timothy Martinez was convicted of drug distribution and firearm charges. This conviction highlights the success we see when federal task forces assist local agencies with specialized investigative resources that open pathways for federal prosecution. This is what happened in this case, worked by our Safe Streets Task Force, which includes the Pueblo Police Department. Martinez had a lengthy criminal record and was in and out of state court for aggravated battery, sex assault, failure to register as a sex offender, trespassing, domestic violence, and possession of a controlled substance with the intent to distribute. Now he is one criminal who is off the streets and will no longer threaten people with guns and poison them with dangerous drugs because he will be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. Federal cases like this help to decrease recidivism, which keeps citizens and local police officers safer by no longer having to endure the violence of repeat offenders and arrest them again and again and again. And since there's no parole under federal law, significant prison sentences serve as a deterrent and force would-be criminals to think twice before committing an act of violence. We'll continue to refine our strategies and use real-time intelligence and advanced technology to target serial offenders who are engaged in drug activities and gun violence. In fact, this summer we're leading a federal, state, and local initiative to disrupt gang activity in Pueblo. The FBI has had meetings with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Colorado, the 10th Judicial District Attorney's Office, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the Drug Enforcement Administration, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Pueblo Police Department to focus resources on violent crime suppression in the greater Pueblo area. Federal conspiracy, violent crimes in support of racketeering activity, and gun violence statutes create the framework for us to use proactive investigative techniques to pursue violent groups as criminal enterprises, which allows us to more effectively address the crime problem by dismantling organizations with the promise of serious prison time and the seizure of assets. Ultimately, the success of our collective efforts will be seen when the good people of Pueblo are comfortable in their community. In law enforcement, our most fundamental duty is to ensure people can live free from fear. And all of us here today recognize that solemn responsibility and will work together to achieve it. I want to thank Mayor Graham and Chief Noeller for their leadership and dedication in making Pueblo a stronger and safer community. I have the pleasure of introducing Chief Chris Noeller. He's been the chief of the Pueblo Police Department since August of 2021, and he's currently serving as the deputy mayor of the city of Pueblo under Mayor Graham. Chief Noeller has numerous professional memberships, including being a member of the International Association of Chiefs of Police since 2014, a member of the FBI Law Enforcement Executive Development Association since 2017. He's been a member of the Colorado Association of Chiefs of Police since 2020 and is the current chair of the Legislative Committee with the Colorado Association of Chiefs of Police. He is a respected police leader and a true public servant. Chief.
Thank you, Senior, our Special Agent Michalek. The past 3 years have been difficult on our community with violent crime and the murders that we've suffered. Already this year, we've had 11 homicides and continue to experience an increase in drive-by shootings and other gun-related violent crime. Our hearts break for the families of those victims, their friends, and our neighbors. Your police department has been focused on addressing the violent crime in our community through proactive police work, building partnerships with our federal partners like the FBI, who are here today highlighting their work on the Safe Streets Task Force with our office. I want to be sure to highlight that our work on violent crime has been ongoing. In just the past 4 weeks, our officers have conducted 8 search warrants, made 5 arrests, and have taken 86 guns off the streets. Additionally, we have recently begun to highlight the work of our officers more frequently with posting about the efforts of our DICE team to work with gangs, guns, and drugs taking action. I encourage you to follow the Pueblo Police Department on Facebook, Instagram, and X to stay up to date about the search warrants executed, seized firearms, narcotics seized, number of citations, PR bonds, and more. Legislation in our state from Denver makes our job of fighting crime much more difficult. It encourages gangs to use younger and younger juveniles to commit these crimes because of bills like House Bill 22-1131 and limits on capacity at the Pueblo Youth Corrections, or PYC. Within Pueblo County, which has a high rate of violent juvenile crime, we have only 9 beds available to house juveniles who commit violent offenses. There are also several laws that have decriminalized felony crimes, making them misdemeanor offenses, which we cannot take to Pueblo County Jail. These changes increase lawlessness and reduce accountability and consequences for criminals. For the past 3 years, I have gone to Denver to testify against this legislation, but we have been ignored at the Capitol. I have also served as the legislative chair for the Colorado Association of Chiefs of Police the past 2 legislative sessions, where I have worked with our lobbyists and my fellow chiefs to address the soft on crime legislation at the state level. In fact, after this press conference, I am going to Denver again to testify against a piece of legislation that will make our job of recruiting and retaining officers next to impossible. The attacks on our profession just will not end. Working within the legislative environment and manpower alignment we find ourselves in, our officers have been persistently working on violent crime. However, we are constantly reviewing our procedures and the deployment of personnel to see where improvements can be made. With that in mind, we are in the process of eliminating our Watch 3 and reallocating those positions to the Criminal Investigations Division with 2 additional persons crimes detectives, 1 special victims crime unit detective, 1 property crime detective, and creating an impact team. This impact team will focus solely on proactive policing directed at gang and gun violence. Their mission is to intercept and disrupt gang and gun violence before it happens by using the laws available to us to contact those criminals before they commit these crimes. These changes, in conjunction with the build-out of our real-time crime center, which is scheduled to go live on June 1st, the implementation of ShotSpotter, installation of advanced license plate readers and other technologies will allow us to focus more directly on violent crime, and with our federal partnerships, we will make an impact. But we cannot do this alone. We need parents, guardians, siblings, and community members to step up and help our youth, be mentors, and model positive behaviors. We need parents to keep tabs on their children, especially late at night. Pay attention to who their friends are and if they are a positive influence. Be aware if your kids have a safe space with the safe ride home. Again, we want to reiterate that we understand the homicide rate this year and the gun violence experienced by our community is taking a toll on our friends, families, and neighbors. Please know that the Pueblo Police Department is taking a new approach to directly address this violent crime because we, too, are deeply affected by gun violence. Thank you for joining us today to hear how we are actively working to better our community, and thank you for your continued support of the Pueblo Police Department. And I'd like to thank Mayor Graham and Supervisory Special Agent Michalek for being here today. Thank you. Are there questions?
I have a question for Mayor Graham. You talked about, a call to action for, many parents looking out for their children, knowing where their children are. Is some of this violent crime that we are seeing with guns and homicides, how much of it is involving our youth here in Pueblo?
The majority of it is involving the youth. When I was younger, the 10 o'clock news used to come on, and you would have an older individual who would say, "It's 10 p.m., do you know where your kids are?" And this is the call. This is, where are your kids? Who are their friends? What are they doing? What are they up to? We have 13, 14, 17-year-olds shooting each other in the head. It's not acceptable. This is not the community I grew up in. This is not the community I want to leave, and this is not the community that anybody in Pueblo wants to participate in. So this is a call to action for parents, grandparents, guardians, friends, siblings, anybody in the community that can be a mentor to any young individual and to really help shape the lives of these juveniles that are in our city that need the extra help to get on the right path.
Right, and these numbers are telling a story in the sense of, like you said, this 11 homicides, which is increased compared to last year. So as people kind of learn this information today, what is your message to people in Pueblo, kind of reassuring them that, you know, you guys are taking a step forward to address this?
The message is the Pueblo Police Department, the mayor, and the city government are working diligently, and now with the FBI over the summer to help combat some of these high crime issues. Hopefully we don't have any more homicides, and hopefully none of these homicides are dealing with children in our community, because that's what it all comes down to, is making sure our community is safe, people feel safe going out after dark, which we know is not the case right now.
Thank you.
And I have a question directly for the FBI. Special Agent, you talked a lot about having inter-partnerships with different federal agencies, such as the ATF, as well as the DEA. Nationally, we've seen some sort of communication issues with collaborating between all these different agencies. You mentioned working on real-time technology to address a lot of this violent crime, but in specific, can you talk more about what those relationships are profiting, as well as what kind of technology you're using?
So I won't comment too much on technology, so that we can continue our investigative techniques, but as Chief Noeller mentioned, we're using a variety of different forms to be able to help collect data in real time to help us inform and drive our investigations. When it comes to kind of the silo effect of federal government, we don't see that in Colorado. I think if you talk to any chief or sheriff or elected leader in the state, you'll hear the same message, that we are lockstep in our commitment to support the community. We just don't have those communication issues here. As the special agent in charge of the FBI responsible for FBI, I meet with the special agent in charge of ATF, DEA, IRS, Secret Service on a weekly basis. And there's a reason we're here. There's a reason that we're in Colorado and we're not federal employees in DC providing remote support. We live here, we have skin in the game, we have kids that go to school here, and we want to make a difference. And that is really the value of partnerships and presence, particularly with federal law enforcement, is that we can bring a unique perspective, whether it's analytical, forensic, behavioral, technical support to existing casework to help clear cases, or proactive investigations to be able to open up different paths for prosecution. There's sometimes when the federal route is more appropriate, others when it's state. So by having that, we can work in parallel to be able to make the biggest impact.
Thank you. And you and Chief Noeller both mentioned gun legislation coming down from the Capitol. Can you talk a little bit more in depth about what specifically is making your professions and your jobs harder to address that violent crime that you're seeing and is prevalent here?
I'll let Chief Noeller talk about the specifics at state legislation, but I think this is a good opportunity to highlight the reality of budget cuts. At the top level, the FBI had a budget cut this year, and many think that that impacts our ability to perform our work, which it does, but it also impacts state and local law enforcement. It impacts our ability to be able to provide support on these task forces. So funding is always an issue for us. I'd love to double the amount of staff that we have working with the Pueblo Police Department, but this year, unfortunately, we received a budget cut at the enterprise level. I'll let the chief talk to the state legislation.
Can you repeat the question again for me?
Yeah, absolutely. You talked a little bit about gun legislation, having to continuously go back to the Capitol to testify, legislation coming down that is imposing and creating harder ways for you to be able to enforce and police. Can you mention a little bit more in specific on
Sure.
your frustrations and maybe what support you would like to see from legislators that would help aid in curating this problem down here?
Absolutely. There's a couple of bills related to guns. In particular, one was the redesign of the possession of a weapon by a previous offender law. Sorry. That about 3 years ago they changed that to now where it only applies to what's called a VRA crime, the Victim Right Act crime, which doesn't include drug distribution. So if somebody's convicted of distributing drugs, they can lawfully in Colorado carry a firearm. If somebody's convicted of motor vehicle theft, they can lawfully carry firearms. That's just the tip of the iceberg, though. The other issues that have happened over the years, the Misdemeanor Reform Act, where they've taken felony offenses, made them misdemeanors, which now means we can't make arrests on them. An example of how that affects crime in our community, we used to be able to take somebody that was arrested for theft at a store. We could trespass that individual from the store. If they returned to that same store and committed the offense again, we could charge them with burglary for entering that store, which was a felony, and then we could take them to county jail. Under the Misdemeanor Reform Act, that piece of the legislation that allowed us to arrest them for that burglary was reduced to a misdemeanor, which in the state of Colorado, most county jails don't accept misdemeanor arrests unless they're related to domestic violence or DUI. It's a common practice. It's not just unique to Pueblo, but it presents a problem. And when lower level crimes are allowed to fester without consequences, it leads to increased crime in our community. And there's a slew of bills over the past 4 years and even earlier that have led to the point where we're at now. And what I would advocate for from our legislators in Denver is to stop being soft on crime and to hold criminals accountable. Without accountability and consequences, crime continues and it increases.
Question, I guess, for you. You talked about eliminating Watch 3 and reallocating certain officers to other smaller teams. Can you tell me about the predicted impact of how that'll work out, I guess?
Well, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. Obviously, I think it's going to work out better, but I don't know for sure. But what it will allow us to do is be more nimble to address the gang violence that is happening in our community when it is happening, to have officers out there that are focused solely on that rather than responding to calls for service. It will probably have an impact in how we determine what calls we respond to, but that's something that we're still looking at. But what it will allow us to do is, number one, increase the number of detectives to follow up on crimes after they've been committed, and create a unit in the evenings that is out there looking for these violent criminals so we can take them off the street before they shoot somebody's house up, or before they shoot somebody, or before they commit a murder, which is what the goal of law enforcement should be. We are going to be a proactive police department where we seek the criminals out and try to arrest them within lawful means prior to them committing the crimes.
And in terms of recent homicides, talking on gang violence, how big of a factor have gangs been versus juveniles, or are they one and the same?
They're really one and the same. I think there's probably a few outliers, but generally speaking, our juvenile violent offenders are gang related.
What are some of the programs that you would like to see juveniles participate in, or a call to action such as Mayor Graham had mentioned, coming from the top down, it starts at home, right? So what are some of those things that parents can do immediately besides sitting down and having those hard conversations to change the culture and kind of the way that the juveniles are going towards?
You know, I think that is variable based on the family and the situation that family is in, but I think there are steps that every family can take to try to be more mindful of what their children are doing, when they're allowed to be out of the house, where they're allowed to be, when they're not. There are a lot of other options that we are looking at in a wider context, not just criminally, that perhaps we can bring partners in from our community. The police cannot be the only ones that are addressing this problem. We have an obligation, and I think the supervisor special agent Michalek said it best, that one of our, and I'm paraphrasing, our primary mission is to make people feel safe in our community. And that is part of our job, but that only extends so far. We need the community to step up. We need the families to step up and be mindful of that. One of the programs that we are actively looking into is a program out of Aurora, Colorado called Aurora Saves. We are in the very initial exploratory sessions with that. We're going to meet with Aurora Police Department and then come back and communicate with our local partners and try to explain how that program works, try to get buy-in and get them involved. And that's more of I don't want to explain a whole lot about it because I don't understand it fully, but it is a program that shows some promise because it still has accountability, but it also provides a network for people in the community to help those children that are involved in violent crime or gang activity.
Last question for myself. I think your role also serving as deputy mayor is very unique across the state of Colorado. Mayor Graham talked a little bit about an executive board being assigned to recruit more duties as well. Is that different from other departments across the state? And do you see any improvement coming towards aiding and solving some of these issues that we're here discussing today?
It is unique. It's in our city charter that the deputy mayor has to be a department head. The mayor saw fit to appoint me to that position, and I'm honored to be named to that position. I think that the efforts that Mayor Graham is making towards addressing some of the length of time it takes in our civil service process to hire employees is going to pay dividends. It's only been a month. We are looking at, in May, starting a couple of academies, a normal police academy, and then what we call job-specific or lateral transfer academy. And between the combination of the two and the people that we have at PCC, we will have about 19 people in those academies, which is a great place to be. The recent additions are solely due, in my opinion, to the efforts of Mayor Graham and the changes that she's made in how we approach the civil service process. I want to stress what she said earlier. This changes our process, not our standards. And we are changing the process. The standards remain the same. You still have to pass all of the steps to be a police officer at Pueblo Police Department. We are not lowering our standard. What we're doing with Mayor Graham's vision is to shorten that time frame and allow us to bring people on quicker, which is really what we need to do. If it takes us 7 months to hire somebody and 3 people leave in that 7-month period, and we only hired 4 people before, that's a net gain of 1. It's gonna take me forever to fill 54 vacancies. Being able to do it throughout the year with lateral transfers and people that are attending unsponsored academies, while also doing our normal hiring process, as Mayor Graham has allowed us to do, will help us to accelerate that hiring process and get ahead of the curve. People leaving is inevitable for a variety of reasons.
You said 54 vacancies as of today?
I think so. It's around there.
A question two-parter, I guess, that I hope both of you can chime in on a little bit, talking about the executive order to hire more cops. I know in my conversations with you previously, you've said, homicide is kind of a difficult crime to stop because you have to be right there pretty much to prevent a lot of these, heat of passion kind of crimes. So I guess with that in mind, can having more cops on the street still help prevent those kind of violent crimes?
I think yes is the answer. I mean, the more, and again, I am a cop that believes 100% that proactive police work is what prevents crime. It may be outlauded in some circles, it may be frowned on to be proactive, and some people want just reactive police officers. But when I took the oath 30 years ago to be a police officer, I took the oath to make a difference in the community in which I worked. And the only way to do that is to do proactive police work, to attack, if you will, the criminal before they are able to do the crime. Having more officers allows us to be more proactive. It allows us to get people on the street who can not just be responding to calls, but doing proactive traffic stops, proactive contacts, walking through different areas of our community where this kind of activity is more prolific. And in that way, I think we can impact our homicide rate. Again, the problem with the homicide is you have 2 people at a specific point in time, at a specific location that intend will ill on one another or on one of the 2. And the only way to make sure that that doesn't happen is for a cop to be right there when it does. And that is difficult to do. But if the bad actors in our community know that our cops are being proactive, that we're looking for you, and we will find you if this is the kind of lifestyle you want to live, and we will make sure that you suffer some sort of consequence in the legal system. I think that will mitigate some of those people that may want to do that kind of criminal activity.
And then Chief, you talked about kind of that 7 months, right? 4 officers coming in, but 3 leaving, only gaining 1 in your typical hiring process. But you guys are going to shift to this, I guess we'd say maybe a little bit less traditional process. How much time would that save, I guess?
It could save quite a bit of time, and it's kind of hard to really explain it,
right.
But I'll try. So the way our hiring process works right now, prior to the changes that Mayor Graham made, it would take us anywhere from 6 to 7 months to get through from the closing of the opening of the application window to when we could bring them on board and put them into an academy. Part of that is because we can only run so many large academies in a year. It's very labor intensive. So part of the thing that we did last year is we started using, or it was actually January of this year, started augmenting our academies with PCC, Pueblo Community Colleges Academies. And we have 7 officers right now in their academy. But the process that Mayor Graham did by changing the civil service rules temporarily is to allow us to, when we would bring a lateral hire, so a lateral hire is somebody that is working at another agency, is already post-certified. If we were doing our old process, they would go on the same list as all of our uncertified officers, and we couldn't jump that list to get to them to bring them on sooner. So we would have to wait until 6 months when the academy started to even hire that person. Well, they're looking for a job for a number of reasons, and they're looking in more than one place. So the odds of that person still wanting to work here in that 6 or 7 month window is pretty slim. But the process that Mayor Graham's executive order now allows us is we can put that person that's certified on a separate list, and we're interviewing lateral transfers every Monday. Every Monday we are. We're going to start a lateral transfer academy in May. We're going to have another one in July. We're going to have another one probably in September, and you can see the difference. And that's the vision that Mayor Graham brought when she brought forward this executive order.
Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, sorry, a little convoluted.
No, but that was very clear. And then kind of just switching gears here a little bit, talk about your relationship and your partnership with the FBI, what that's kind of looked like so far. They talked a little bit about this street safety program and what we've seen so with that success.
It's been phenomenal. We have worked with the FBI in this capacity for 5 or 6 years. And it's really one of the best things that's ever happened for our community. We have as the FBI special agent, thank you, who's assigned to our building, works in our office and helps us work cases. He brings resources that we wouldn't have, and he also brings a level of knowledge and expertise that local law enforcement doesn't have either, and connections throughout the country. We have access if, for example, and I'm not saying this has happened, but if we have a gang issue here in Pueblo and there's something that happened in South Carolina that the FBI is aware of, we get this information and we're able to network and share. I've been a cop for 30 years, and I think over the last 5 to 6 years, I've never seen a better relationship with our department and our federal partners, specifically the FBI.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
Thanks.